Okay, welcome to this screencast on persuasive writing. This approach is designed to get someone to take your side, to agree with a point of view that you're trying to put forward. So let's get started. First off, here's a couple connections to the system we've already learned. All right, some basics so that we're starting on the right track. It's the same basic format as the essay map. So you're going to have a brief introduction that ends with your main point. It's a topic statement here as opposed to a thesis statement. And your body paragraphs will still have main ideas, supporting ideas, examples. Same basic structure. You're still proving something. Then at the end of the paper, you will still have a brief conclusion that restates what you want the reader to believe or do. Now, regarding the intro and conclusion, you're going to have to adapt that depending on what you're writing. Just like when we do an open response question, you don't have an intro and a conclusion, you just have a clear topic sentence. Same thing if you're doing a brief persuasive piece, like the assessments that you're going to be doing during our science fiction unit. In those ones, you don't want an introduction and a concluding paragraph. You want to just open and close with a very clear statement. So, what's different from the analytic format that we've learned? The big thing is your goal. You're not analyzing literature. You're arguing a point of view. So that means you can talk directly to your audience. You can say, you need to do X, you should try Y, etc. Because you're trying to persuade them. All right? And beyond just using the second person to talk directly to your audience, there are a number of techniques that you can use to help win that debate. And it really is a debate. All right? So, here we go. Let's start with what you're going to try to prove. Your topic statement. In the topic statement, you need to state a clear position. What it is you want someone to believe, what you want them to do or not do. And you want it to be broad enough to be able to connect to all of your details, just like you do with the thesis statement. All right, and here's an example. Your future may depend on it. Don't play tackle football before high school. All right, now notice the emotional angle here, saying your future may depend on it. Right? You're talking directly to the reader, and you're giving a statement about what you want them to be persuaded to believe. So, now for the persuasive techniques. All right, here's a classic one, and we did this in the medieval paper. All right, that was how I sort of got your feet wet with this. You acknowledge the opposing side. You want to mention an argument the other side's going to bring up, but you don't want to support it too strongly. Right? Because you don't want to win them over to the side you're arguing against. You also don't want to have overly negative or critical language, because that'll turn your audience off. They're not going to be interested in what you have to say. All right, so here's an example. Now notice it acknowledges an argument that some people say that kids need to learn these techniques at a young age, but then it counters it with an example that makes sense about Tom Brady and how he wasn't allowed to play until he was 14. It doesn't say, hey, if you think that tackle football should be played by little kids, you're a moron. All right? Because that's going to turn off your reader. You don't want to attack them. You don't want to be overly critical. You just want to counterbalance it with an opposing argument. It's a debate. So, next technique. You want to use evidence from a text when you can. All right? You'll be doing that in the pieces you'll do in the science fiction unit. Here, it's from a book that deals with the topic of children and football and concussions. And so you have this quote. You can read it here. You can pause and read through this. All right, so now you're using an expert to support your argument. That adds weight to the point you're trying to make. Next thing is you can tell an anecdote, a little story that relates to it. This is something politicians do all the time. They'll bring up that they were talking to so and so, little Johnny, who really wants whatever. And here's one for the concussion story. Right, one mother talking about her son who had a concussion a couple weeks ago and how shook up this whole thing made her. It's a way to personalize the argument because you can use emotional points to sway your audience. It's not an analytic paper where you only want to argue facts. Here you can play on the emotions of your reader. You want to be reasonably honest in doing so, but you can draw the reader's emotions in. Another thing you can do, and this goes along with direct quotes from texts about your topic, is bring up statistics, real statistics. All right, like this one here talks about emergency room visits that have been increasing over the last decade or so. All right, it's a good statistic that you can bring up to make your point. Another technique is to ask rhetorical questions. Now, a rhetorical question is one that you don't really expect to get an answer to. You're putting the question out there just to get the person to think. Is playing a game worth the long-term health of a child? Right? It's a leading question where you know what the answer you're looking for is. The next thing you can do is make a statement of concern. All right, such as this one. Many youth football players never even get their concussions diagnosed, opening them up to long-term health risks. Right? So you're taking this thing you're trying to persuade someone and opening it up to this larger area of concern to show that it's a real issue, to really persuade that audience to believe your side. Now, one note of caution with these techniques. Depending on the type of assignment you have to use your judgment to decide which ones to use. All right, the goal here isn't to hit every technique in every piece of writing. It's choosing the right tool for the job. Right? If you're looking to hammer in a nail, you probably want to get a hammer. You don't want a screwdriver and you don't want a chainsaw. All right, so choose the tool that's appropriate for the job. Last thing, the concluding statement. Now this, much like in the conclusion of an analytic paper, is restating your main point. But you really want to hammer home what it is you're trying to persuade the reader or audience to believe. So you're going to use definitive words. You're going to highlight your strongest arguments and ideally make a compelling call to action, sort of broadening out again to that bigger audience and that bigger issue. So here's a statement for the hypothetical paper on kids playing football. Save your mind, save your health. Don't play tackle football before high school. It's an absolute command here. It's trying to use powerful words and a broader issue of health to argue its case. All right, so that wraps up this presentation. If you have questions, see me in class, let me know, and we'll start using this technique shortly. Thank you.